This is The Agenda. Local newsmakers, community leaders, and people in our valley making a difference. Here's your host, Dave Bernstein.
And as always, good to have you with us on the program today. And we want to talk about taxes. We want to also bring your attention to perhaps a business advantage our state is signaling it's willing to give up. A guy who's keeping a close eye on that, as always, Jason Mercier with the Washington Policy Center. He's the director for government reform. And Jason, thanks for joining us on the program.
Hey, David, thanks for having me on. You know, we're only 1 week here into the legislative session. We've seen over 600 bills, and the tax proposals are flying left and right.
Well, it appears that we're seeing some telltale signs. You've noticed something on I guess, the Department of Commerce website that really is a troubling signal, and you've been asked some questions about that, about our tax environment, which has always been touted as a real advantage for coming to our state. And so let's tell our listeners why this is so troubling.
Yeah, for over a decade, the Washington Department of Commerce, which is basically our economic agency in the state that's used to advertise to employers across the world about why Washington is a good investment, why they should bring their business here and their employees here. And they've run this website called Choose Washington, making this pitch. And one of the things that they had on there was our business strengths, where they prominently said businesses in Washington are at a competitive advantage because there is no personal or corporate income tax. And I highlighted this last week on my testimony on the governor's proposed income taxes, 9% income tax on capital gains, which is Senate Bill 5096. I wrote a study on that and highlighted that page from Commerce's website. But interestingly, just before the hearing started, I noticed that page had changed. They'd actually removed that discussion about no income tax from their webpage.
Now, what is, obviously, I think we can kind of sort of put two and two together, what this may be signaling that this is going away.
Well, you know, a few years ago, that website also said no capital gains tax, and they took that off the page. And when I asked them about it, they said, well, you know, the governor's got his proposal, so we don't think it's fair to advertise it. You know, he's trying to take it away. And, you know, interestingly, though, and I sent them an email after my testimony trying to figure out, well, who made this decision? Why was this done? Because this has been on the website for almost 10 years. And the answer that I got, you know, it seems fairly rational. That they're constantly updating their marketing material and decided they wanted to highlight something else. But the curious thing about that, they only changed the page that I referenced in my study. Either they forgot to or they haven't yet changed two other parts of that website, still touting the fact that we don't have an income tax. So I'm going to keep an eye on it. I'm going to see if it goes away. But we think they have it right the first time. I mean, for over a decade, we have been telling people that this is an advantage. We know this from other businesses that have moved here, saying they did it because of an income tax. And one of those is Amazon. And in fact, in 2017, when Amazon was looking at where to locate its second headquarters, the state of Washington and local officials submitted a 522-page pitch to Amazon about why it should choose Washington. And throughout that was repeated reference to the fact that there are no income taxes, no capital gain taxes.
And this is an advantage that we have and that few other states could boast. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, we are only one of 9 states without a personal income tax. A couple of those do have corporate income taxes. We also don't have a corporate income tax. And this is what's kind of been a little bit curious about this capital gains tax bill that you've seen floated now for almost 9 years. The governor and the supporters call it an excise tax. There is no tax professional and no tax agency in the world outside of Washington state that calls it an excise tax. Every single one from the IRS to every other state will say it's an income tax. That's because capital gains are income. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, this is just tax semantics, why does it matter? It matters because under Washington's Constitution, we have the broadest definition of properties, everything subject to ownership. And for nearly 100 years, the state Supreme Court has said you own your income, and that makes it property, which means you can't have a graduated income tax without a constitutional amendment.
And voters have rejected this, signal or rejected this every single time, or signaled that they don't want an income tax every time that this is come up. Am I misunderstanding that, or clarify that for me?
It actually passed once, and then was ruled unconstitutional by the state Supreme Court. And since that time, the voters have been sent 10 more proposals, 6 constitutional amendments, and 4 ballot measures to allow an income tax. And with the exception of that very first time during the Great Depression, 10 straight times by nearly 60 to 70% no votes, Washingtonians have said no. And the interesting thing about that is the legislature twice before has tried to play this game where it actually passed a personal and a corporate income tax, but called it an excise tax. And the state Supreme Court struck those down, saying it doesn't matter what you call it. It's an income tax. And my favorite ruling from the state Supreme Court actually came as a 1-page unanimous ruling in 1960. And the justices told the Attorney General and the legislature, stop asking us to change our opinions, to say that people don't own their income. If you want a graduated income tax, amend the Constitution.
We're talking to Jason Mercier. He is with the Washington Policy Center. He is the director of the Center for Government Reform. Tell us a little bit more, give us a little bit more about what Senate Bill 5096 is proposing.
So as proposed right now, it is a 9% income tax on capital gains. And oddly enough, even though the bill and the governor calls it an excise tax, the actual text of the bill says the tax applies to the net long-term gain you report to the IRS, which is why those subject to this tax have to submit to the state of Washington for the first time their federal income tax returns to help verify the tax compliance. There are some exemptions that are provided for this. The challenge with old taxes, though, that unless those exemptions and rates are in the Constitution, they can be changed in a future legislature. So you have to say how comfortable are you that the legislature is not going to adjust those rates and bases going forward. We have not seen a House companion yet, but there are rumors that there will be some type of income tax on capital gains also proposed in the House, but it may not be the same one as the Senate bill. The public hearing was last week. There is still time for individuals, if they're concerned about this, to contact their lawmakers and express their opinion. It hasn't been scheduled yet for a public for what they call executive session, where they're going to act on the bill. But, as we started this interview, I mentioned how there are tax bills flying left and right. Not only this income tax, today we had a gas tax proposed, a carbon tax. There's been bills talking about a tax on compensation that employers will have to pay for employees. I think it's just kind of interesting that we're having all of this tax debate against the backdrop of a revenue forecast that is showing revenue growth. Our revenues are still growing, our budget is still growing, yet we're still having these proposals for tax increases.
And our revenue is growing despite this big impact on so many sectors of our small businesses. So that almost seems counter that we're still able to do as well as we are.
Right, and we did actually have a work session today in the Senate Finance Committee by Senator Mark Mullet, a Democratic chair, about economic recovery, how to open up the state's economy. And this is basically the legislature's first opportunity in the last 9 months to weigh in on what the governor's been doing. That hearing started off with the Department of Health making their presentation, and I think for the first time, they got some very difficult questions from lawmakers about why they're doing things that other states aren't doing, why their metrics are always changing. And that work session also heard from several business owners, from bowling alleys to restaurants to movie theaters to gyms, talking about everything they've done to allow their business to safely reopen, and the fact that their counterparts in other states are reopened and not showing outbreaks, and they're being treated differently here in Washington. It was just a fascinating work session. That's going to be followed up tomorrow by a public hearing on Senate Bill 5114, and that is a bill by Senator Braun and Senator Mullen, a bipartisan bill, to immediately put the state into phase 2, to basically open up all the economy at least at 25% capacity. And according to Senator Mullet, there are already 800 people that have signed in to testify on that bill tomorrow.
Yeah, I know. If folks go to KPQ.com, we've got the instructions on how you can at least watch, or I don't know if there's still time to sign up to participate on that, but you've been watching this for a long time. 800 seems an exorbitant amount. I don't know that could they accommodate that many people that want to participate? That's a lot.
So they will not definitely be able to hear from all of them, but this is why when you go to the legislature's website, both for House and Senate bills, you have multiple ways to provide comment. You can just do a written comment where it's a form and that gets submitted to the lawmakers. You can sign up for the remote testimony, and that's the video conferencing like Zoom or calling in via phone. You have to do that at least an hour before the hearing, but just because you're in the queue, you may not get called. Because there's 800 people, you get a chance to be signed in, but there's no guarantee. And finally, the last way that you can let your voice be heard is there's a way to just say you submit whether you're pro or con for the bill, and it'll become part of the official record. And of course, separate from just their official sign-in procedure, you can always call, email, or write your lawmakers and let them know your position on various bills.
Well, it's that figure 800 plus just indicates that so many people have a stake in this. Jason, we were talking about Senate Bill 5096, and as far as that capital gains, there's a lot of folks that might just think, this doesn't affect me, but you're using the term basis. And that basis could change over the years. Right now, we might think, this is only going to affect the wealthy, but that basis could change in the future, couldn't it?
Well, and it's not even about the capital gains tax, because no state has a standalone tax on capital gains, because they are extremely volatile and unpredictable. You can't rely on them. And in fact, California, their former Democratic governor, Governor Brown, in 2014, got California to amend their constitution to take basically their capital gains portion of their revenue off of the balance sheet because it was wrecking their budget. They didn't want it to be available for spending or tax cuts. So it's just not a predictable revenue stream to begin with. Now, that's not what this is about. I mean, there is no doubt in my mind a court will rule this in income tax. There's just, you can't look at what the IRS says. You can't look at what all 49 states say. You can't look at what tax professionals across the world say and say, you guys are all wrong and only Washington is right. This is an income tax. But they don't want just the tax on the capital gain. The goal is, and we talked about how the voters have been rejecting those constitutional amendments, and income tax is the third rail of politics in the state of Washington. If they pass this capital gains tax and they get sued and it goes to the courts, well, now we see, will the justices change their mind? Are there now 5 votes to say, no, you don't want your income? If they do that, then you no longer need that constitutional amendment to impose a graduated income tax.
Yeah, that was gonna kind of be my next question. Threats in this session to our personal income tax. So it's just the slippery slope, I guess, huh?
Well, it's not even a slippery slope. It's the plan, and we know this because the legislature is subject to public records, and we did a records request, and among the emails we got were emails from the supporters of this saying that this was their best chance to set up an income tax in the state of Washington because they'll be sued and they'll see if they can get the justices to change their minds. It's not a bug. It's the featured goal of this proposal.
All right. Well, Jason, I sure appreciate some time with you today. We get a chance to kind of check in with you, but Jason is prolific with getting information out about what's going on in our state government. Again, the Policy Center keeps a close eye on this. And if you go to kpq.com, we've got information there so you can watch or even participate with that hearing tomorrow. But this is very, very important. I appreciate your time today. Jason, any final thoughts before we let you get on to more of your day today?
Well, as I mentioned, I did get to participate in that remote testimony. It is very easy to use. I would really encourage everybody, not just on these issues, but on all issues. And this is our legislature. This is our government and our chance to be heard. And it's really up to us to take advantage of it. So it's easy to do, and I just encourage your listeners to take advantage of that.
Okay, I want to let folks know WashingtonPolicy.org. On the website, Twitter at Olympia Watch, and Facebook.com/Washington.policy.center, and you can track bills at WashingtonVotes.org. All kinds of great information out of the Washington Policy Center. Hey, thanks for being on with us today. We sure appreciate it.
All right, thanks for having me on.
Jason Mercier, again, is director of the, it's a long title, and I get this right, director of the Center for Government Reform with the Washington Policy Center.